A major defeat today for New York's Mayor Michael Bloomberg and what have been about 4 years of efforts to sue the nation's gun makers. The U.S. Supreme Court rejecting the city's lawsuit against the firearms industry. Bloomberg arguing that the industry had violated the law because some of the guns were used in crimes in New York City, trying to make the gun makers liable. Among the manufacturers sued by Bloomberg were Colt, Smith & Wesson, Beretta, and Glock. The Supreme Court action today supports the gun makers, obviously. A 2005 federal law provides gun makers with broad immunity from any lawsuits. Mayor Bloomberg said the city is examining whether to pursue other legal options. In other words, they're out of luck. Elsewhere in the country, our right to bear arms under the Second Amendment is also under assault. The FBI providing instant background checks for all who purchase guns. But some states insist on running their own background checks, and then they add restrictions on gun owners in the process, and they also add a few fees. Bill Tucker has our report.
States don't have to charge for background checks on gun purchases. The background checks are required by federal law. The FBI provides the service for free. Currently, 29 states use that service at no charge to either the buyer or the state. But other states handle the checks differently. 8 states do their own background checks and licensing on handguns, leaving background checks on rifle purchases up to the feds. 13 states run their own checks on purchases of both handguns and rifles, running a check against the FBI database and then against the state's database, charging fees for those checks. Wisconsin, for example, says it needs more money for state law enforcement programs, so it wants to raise the fees on handguns from $8 to $30. That's more than twice the actual cost of running the background check, according to the Wisconsin Attorney General's office. The actual cost to the state, $13. The Brady Group, advocates of gun control and the namesake of the background checks, defends the state's rights to charge the fees, saying, if a state wants to offer Brady background checks without a fee, they're free to do so. The state legislatures in those states would simply have to make up the funding that the state agency which charges the fee would lose. But it is an action that angers ardent defenders of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. They argue the action by the states amounts to little more than gun control.
I think it goes beyond balancing the budget on the back of gun owners, which they have no problem doing. They are trying to discourage gun ownership.
They argue gun ownership is discouraged by pricing and regulating the Second Amendment beyond the reach of many citizens.
And gun right groups say if the states want to save money rather than raising the cost of owning a gun, they should cut the state spending and let the federal government handle the background checks. Lou, after all, we're already paying for it with our tax dollars.
It's double jeopardy, and again, as obviously the Gun Owners Association points out, it's an effort to control gun ownership.
Exactly.